Hey, what's up? I'm Dustin. I'm going to show you how I made this DIY Mandalorian helmet pretty much entirely out of duct tape and cardboard. I recently made a more complicated version. There's a link in the description to that video if you want to get a little fancier using craft foam and barge cement and all that kind of stuff. But this is a very simple version. There's free templates that you can download that are slightly different for this one, and it's really just out of cardboard and duct tape, and it has a really cool handmade DIY look to it. So I'm going to show you how I made it. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is just cut out all of these templates. These are modified specifically for this cardboard version, and I made the front of the face a little bit longer since that's something a lot of people ask for, and I totally agree. So I printed these out, and I'm just going to cut them out. There's a link to download these for free in the description. Alright, so those are all of my template pieces cut out. I'm going to trace those onto cardboard. I'm really going to see if I can do this entire thing with just cardboard. So I've been collecting some old boxes that came in the mail, and you might even just need a few small pieces here and there. So any little scraps that I have, I'm going to use. So one important trick with cardboard is that it can be very curvy, but only in one direction. So you take a look at the perforation, which is the little wiggly lines, which way they go. And if you curve it along with the perforation, it can be real bendy like this. So I'm going to put arrows on these templates so you can see exactly which direction the perforation should go when you lay these down to trace them. So to get the orientation right, just look at those faint lines in the cardboard, and the arrow will point in that exact direction. So when you cut them out, they'll bend the right way when they fit together. I'm also marking all the registration points and the letters that will line up when we put it together. I'm just starting with the pieces that don't say thin using just regular cardboard. I'll get to those later. Alright, I just finished tracing all of my stencils onto the regular cardboard. Now that was actually just one side of them. You'll notice that they say left. So I'm going to flip every stencil over and now trace them again, and now give me the pieces for the other side. So make sure you label these really well too so you know which is which. So I'm going to trace them all again upside down. Okay, so now all my pieces are ready to be cut out. I'm gonna use either a sharp X-Acto knife or a sharp utility knife, maybe both. All right, so I'm gonna cut these all out. I gotta help her. No, I'm not gonna help. Just wants to be on the lap. Now some of these have a little note whether this is a top bevel or the bevel goes under. It's not super important, you can just glue these together loosely, but it just means that when I'm cutting these with my knife, instead of going straight down like I normally would, I'm gonna angle it over or angle it under, depending on what it says. For this piece that says top strip, I just gave you the end shape, but then just measure it out 16 inches long. Alright, those are my two sets of cutouts, left and right. So I do have one little piece on the template marked as thin, so for that I'm not using the regular cardboard which has the perforation in it. I'm just using a piece of like thicker, kind of almost like a thicker cardstock that I'm just going to cut those little tiny pieces out of. So there are 6 of those little pieces for that back like bent thing, so I'll trace and cut those out on this piece. Alright, that's all of my cardboard. So now I'm going to start gluing the pieces together using the hot glue, and I just have to look at which letters go next to the matching letters and kind of put it together like a big puzzle. So some of these front pieces do have that slight curve to them, so I'm just going to curve them slightly along with the perforation. It's okay if all of these seams don't line up perfectly because I am going to cover this all with duct tape anyway. Once I get these set, I'm reinforcing the inside with some extra hot glue. So I started with these front face pieces and then worked my way back along the bottom, and now I'm just adding these pieces to the top, and then I'll be able to just curve them over and glue the edges. I'm not just curving these one direction, I'm actually really squeezing them and making them a little bit more rounded because that's going to be better for the top. I had a little bit of an extra gap when I put the last piece together, so I just used a piece of tape to connect it and then filled in the space with some hot glue. Alright, that's the first half. Looks pretty rad, so now I'm just going to do the other half with all the other pieces in a time lapse. Alright, those are my two halves. Looking pretty good, so now I'm just going to glue these together. Alright, both sides are together, it looks awesome. So I left off these two front pieces. These are kind of doubling up just to add an extra layer on the front, so I'll bend these and glue those on. The middle might be a little long and overlap, so once it's being glued into place, just cut it exactly to the right spot. Alright, that looks so cool. I almost want to leave it just like this. Before I move on to the top, side, and back pieces, I'm going to cover this entire thing with duct tape. I'm not sure how wrinkly this is going to be, but I'll just take it like piece by piece and figure it out. All right, completely covered with duct tape. I'm totally loving the way this looks. So there's a really thin strip that goes across the front on top, so I'll just use a piece of cardboard and cut a very thin slice out of that. Once I cut it, I'll just cover this with duct tape and then glue it into place. All right, that looks about right. So now I'm gonna do this top strip, which is that 16-inch piece that goes across the top here. So I'm going to cover this with duct tape. But first, you'll see on the template, there's this inner line. So I'm gonna score that using the X-Acto knife and just make a really light line and then kind of dig it in a little further with a little screwdriver. Then I'll cover the whole thing with duct tape and I'll just hit that line again to create that groove. So I'm just gonna flatten out the tip of this a little bit and then I'll just attach this with the hot glue. I'm not gonna fully glue the back of this yet because it's a little long. Once I put this back vent on, then I can cut it to the exact size. All right, so now I'm gonna put in the face shield. This is the only thing that I actually purchased for this entire build. So this was on Amazon, it was $13. I bought the 16-inch version. Technically you only need 12-inch, but I think they're the same price and I wanted to play it safe. So make sure you get the 0.04 thickness, not 0.06. I screwed that up when I built this one. I got the version that was way too thick and I had to use my rotary tool to cut it and it was like a whole ordeal. So people online are saying that this is a lot better. I should be able to just cut this with my scissors. So first I'll just map out exactly what shape I need to cut. So I'm just marking this with the white wax pencil. I'm just gonna do the sides then when I cut those first. All right, you know what? I'm gonna make a template first. Just like last time, I'm scared I'm gonna cut this wrong. So I'm gonna first make it out of cardboard. All right, so I'll include a rough template for the visor in the templates file, but just beware that once you put all your cardboard together, it's gonna vary a lot. So do a test version like this first before you cut your plastic. So now I'll trace this onto the plastic and then cut it out. And then I'll glue around the edges with the hot glue. Along with the hot glue, I'm gonna throw some heavy duty tape in there too. All right, that's the face shield. Looks super cool. Now you can see out of it. You don't actually have to buy this. You could just put some black cardboard in here if you don't want to see out of it and save some money. So now I'm gonna move on to these side pieces. I call them the earpieces. So I've got my cutouts that I already made a little while ago. So just look at the pictures for reference, but this is how my pieces fit together. Don't forget to also follow the lines on these templates to get these extra lines using that scoring technique. Okay, now I'll glue them together. All right, my two side pieces are now assembled, so I'm gonna spray paint these with some metallic silver paint. I actually really like the raw cardboard look of these. That's why I'm just gonna spray paint these directly, but you could of course cover these with tape or coat them with something if you want. So I'll start with gray primer for an even base, then I'll spray them silver. All right, so the side pieces are dry, so I'll just attach these with hot glue. Okay, side pieces are on, so now I'm gonna move on to this back vent. I have those pieces that I cut out earlier. So I'm gonna take these 6 little individual pieces and just line them up based on the photos. I'll just assemble this whole thing with a piece of tape. All right, there's my little panel, so I'm just gonna spray this with the same spray paint. All right, the back panel is dry, so now's the time that we're gonna cut this top strip to the exact length. So I'm just gonna line this up with the bottom, and then I'll know exactly where I wanna cut that strip. And then I'll just attach it with hot glue. I just realized that I put this panel on upside down, so I'm gonna flip those little vent thingies around and then glue it back on. All right, well, you could totally stop here and it would be finished, but I'm gonna take it a step further and add some little details just like I did in the last one, using some brown paint. I'm just gonna kind of dirty up some of the edges and just smudge it on, water it down with some water, rub it on with my finger, and just kind of make some of the creases and edges look really greasy and dirty. Okay, all those greasy details are done, so I'm gonna lock everything in with one final clear coat. And I already masked off the face shield earlier. All right, there we go. It's complete, the duct tape helmet. It doesn't look really that much different than this one, which was a lot harder to make. And I like that it has a very DIY handmade quality to it. So let's try it on. Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe to the channel for more DIY content and check out my other recent Star Wars builds as well. And let me know in the comments if you have any other questions. See you next time.